But there is no straight path to greatness. Northern Dancer had a quarter crack in his left hoof, enough to retire him. They tried a radical new patch. It seemed to work. Northern Dancer won the Flamingo Stakes in Florida with the legendary Willie Shoemaker, the Shoe.
The most successful racehorse and stallion bred in Canada could have been a greater bargain than Round Table, where he was priced at $25,000 as a yearling of 1962, but there were no buyers. By spring 1964, Northern Dancer, trained by Horatio Luro and still owned by his breeder, E.P. Taylor, was preparing for the Kentucky Derby. Favored for this Derby was Hill Rise, a tall, long-striding Californian. On the first Saturday in May, Northern Dancer pranced out sporting saddlecloth 7, while the favorite carried number 11. It was to be a thrilling derby, a 7-11 derby.
And they're off. Breaking from the gate, Mr. Brick on the inside, Will Rad on the outside, Royal Shuck on the extreme outside.
The run for the Roses started well and held no surprises through the early running. Mr. Brick, Royal Shuck, the Scoundrel, and Will Rad made the pace first time past the stands, with Hill Rise under Bill Shoemaker going easily in 6th place, just ahead of Northern Dancer and Bill Hartack.
Royal Shuck on the outside, Mr. Brick on the inside.
As they went into the first turn, Hartack, who rode a brilliant race, moved Northern Dancer into 6th place, and from this point to the wire would see to it that Hill Rise would never head his mount.
With Hill Rise. Further back, it's Mr. Moonlight, Roman Brother, Extra Swell. Then it's Ishkuda and Dandy K.
Northern Dancer is not yet 3 years old on this day and stands just above 15 hands, but has a stride that looks 2 sizes too big and a quickness not equaled by Hill Rise.
Now Will Rad is moving up. The Scoundrel moves on the outside to 4th. On the inside, Quadrangle is 5th. Northern Dancer is now 6th. Hill Rise is 7th on the outside. Mr. Moonlight on the inside.
Nearing the far turn, Hartack sends Northern Dancer after the leaders. Hill Rise, checked momentarily by racing traffic, takes off after the Flying Canadian.
Northern Dancer has now moved to 3rd and also moving to challenge. Further back, Quadrangle, Hill Rise moving on the outside.
Into the long stretch, it's Northern Dancer taking command, with Hill Rise coming on the outside. Northern Dancer on the lead by 2 lengths, and Hill Rise driving courageously under extreme pressure from Shoemaker. The big horse keeps trying, but at the finish, it's the Canadian Bulldog winning it by a neck. Hill Rise 2nd, and the Scoundrel 3rd. The time of 2 minutes established a new Derby record. Two weeks later at Pimlico, the 2 rivals met only 4 others for the 2nd Jewel and Racing's Triple Crown. Trainer Horatio Luro and jockey Hartack were brilliant in their handling of Northern Dancer. At the start of the Preakness, the Canadian colt was sent from the gate smartly and raced 3rd to Big Pete and Quadrangle to remain in good striking distance. Hill Rise, meanwhile, raced outside the 3 into the first turn and never seemed to find his best stride. Only a few people close to Northern Dancer knew that the colt had been running on a patched hoof to alleviate a quarter crack suffered in training, and no one knew whether or not this then revolutionary treatment would be successful. At the final turn, Northern Dancer turned back his final challenger and coasted home. Quadrangle, who finished 4th this day, would come back to win the Belmont Stakes and prevent a Triple Crown sweep. But the best horse ever bred in Canada had no match here in Maryland. Northern Dancer's owner, Edward Plunkett Taylor, is the world's all-time leading breeder of thoroughbreds, having sent out more than 200.
Dancer was number 2 in Winfield's Turquoise and Gold.
When they get away, it's a 40-to-1 shot. Orientalist, who takes the lead with Hill Rise 2nd and Northern Dancer back in the pack. The Belmont is a 1.5-mile race, and anything can happen at that distance.
He was running third on the outside in the final stretch.
And he pulls away from the favored Northern Dancer and the highly touted Hill Rise. Quadrangle has a tendency to slow down when running in front. And Ikaza gives him a touch of the whip to keep him flying for the wire. And fly he does, despite a slight...
Well, he just didn't make it. He was third.
Interrupted race on the continent. A mile and 1/4.
This Canadian race was as important to EP as the Kentucky Derby.
The Dancer has come home. A gallant warrior whose record has struck a warm chord with thousands of Canadians. Trainer Luro is here, of course, and jockey Hartack, and Winfield's racing.
He came out of the gate, and it was a huge roar. The crowd thought, you know, this horse is just going to tow rope the field.
7 other Canadian breds engaged the fabled Dancer on this warm and sunny June the 20th before more than 31,000 people. And at least 31,000 of them are dismayed as Hartack takes Northern Dancer back and back.
That early part of the Queen's Plate was an abomination. You could almost sense it in the grandstand, like, you know, what is he doing?
Only the filly Later Mel trails the Dancer.
He was like trailing the field. It's our Kentucky Derby winner, and he's trailing the field. So Mr. Hartack certainly rode a different kind of race when he came to Canada than what he did in the States.
Now half a mile has fled by, and Northern Dancer is absolutely last.
I know my mother and I were standing there with our binoculars. We didn't say a word to each other, but I knew exactly what she was feeling.
After 3/4 of a mile, Hartack finally finds the running room he wanted. Now watch that champion charge.
Bill Hartack, he knew he was going to win this race. He knew he could press the go button on this horse anytime he wanted to. And it was a hand ride for Hartack down the stretch. I mean, there was a little bit of drama in the race instead of being a one-sided affair right from the get-go.
And then Northern Dancers put on this great run, which was wonderful to see. I imagine that he said to himself, Mrs. Taylor is expecting me to win today. I don't want to disgrace her.
And here he comes, bounding in the form and style of the finest thoroughbred in Canadian racing history.
Canada's great little horse, Northern Dancer, wins
And then he never raced again.